Alright, good evening, everybody. Alright, so this is just a general topic. Let me rephrase that. It's a topic that I wanted to talk about um, in general, but I'm going to make references to recent stuff that I've gone through. Have you ever noticed nobody wants to fix things anymore? And this is true all around. This is true with your material things. This is true with you know things in your situations in your personal life. You know, everything has become disposable. This computer I'm using to record this video, this phone that I'm charging, is fucking disposable. You know, this will be good for another 3 years. You know, the computer I'm using is already on its last fucking legs. And, you know, the car I'm driving, you know, the daily, you know, the Hyundai Santa Cruz, that's going to be outdated. You know, my Geo Tracker and my old daily, the 05 Colorado, are considered old. Well, the Tracker, of course, is old because it's a fucking 90, you know, so that's a whole different ballgame in itself. And it's not quite at the level of cult following, you know, like some other vehicles would be. But, you know, let me focus more on the daily. It was old. Undercarriage was looking like Swiss cheese. And every time we bring it somewhere to, you know, a repair shop, you know, they want to look at it and say, no, this is beyond our scope. No, it's too old. You should get something new. Why? You know, ask yourself why. That is the question. You know, why is it? You know, you should always have to get something new. You know, the new is big as hottest thing. You know, I didn't want to have to get a new truck. I like the Santa Cruz. Don't get me wrong. It's definitely earned my respect for what it can do. But you know, I didn't want to have to get something new. And you know, I've covered this, and many other people have covered this as well. You know, all the new stuff has just fucking too much technology that's going to be outdated, and then you're gonna have to buy the next new thing, and then you got electric cars and trucks thrown into the equation, which is a whole other set of problems in of itself. Now, obviously, it's been that way since I want to say the 2000s, and you know, in the case of, you know, the automotive industry, you know, a lot of people on the left were really, you know, they were proud of Obama for bailing them out. I'm like, look where that fucking got us. Now you have to fucking buy something new every few years and take out fucking crazy car notes. And you know, the older vehicles, you know, like my Tracker. I mean, hell, I went through this with my fucking Colorado, which was 15 years newer. You can't find parts for them. You know, you have to scour the internet and scour and scour and scour. And I've gotten pretty good at scouring the internet and getting help, you know, with that. And I've had to do it for the Colorado. Like, you know, when I first moved down to Virginia, you know, obviously I had to make sure it could pass Virginia inspection because, you know, they have a different set of laws in Massachusetts. And, you know, it needed a fuel pump. And it needed a gas tank. And, well, the fuel pump you could get, you know, not through AC Delco, but you get an aftermarket. And, you know, I took it to, you know, a Chevy deal initially, you know, for that problem, you know, because it had, you know, the fuel cap code, which is large evap. And with that in mind, you know, because Virginia laws are different than, you know, Massachusetts, you know, they would have failed it, you know, if it had a code. Now, Massachusetts, on the other hand, they probably would have looked at, okay, whatever, slap a fucking stick if it passes suspension, all the other stuff, not a huge amount of blah, blah, blah. You know, it's a whole different ballgame. Now, of course, part of that is because of government overreach. Especially Massachusetts, when they stop putting in fucking, cameras in the fucking bays. Thinking that an inspection person doesn't know how to do their job. Now, to be fair, when people let their vehicles get to the point where they're being held together by fucking duct tape, floor wire, coat hangers and shit, and yeah, you might want to let that one go. But mine wasn't quite that bad. The color on it wasn't quite that bad, but it was headed that way. And trying to fix the body rust. Yeah, that's where they really get you. I suppose the only way around that would have been fucking have somebody quote unquote smash in those areas with something and then file an insurance claim. But when they file someone to those, then they start really looking at that. Wait, they're rusty. All of a sudden, he gets hit. Anyhow, I'm not condoning anything or advocating anything like that. For the record, just make that clear. Now, enough about cars. Let's talk about everything else that we have in life. A fucking, refrigerator with all touchscreens, like a smart refrigerator. Like, what the fuck? Do we really need all that? It's going to be out of date too. They were much better when they were much more simple. 34 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly, and then obviously, below 0 Fahrenheit, for the freezing, so you can keep stuff frozen. Duh. Now those are outdated, and obviously, other things are just obsolete. And what do we do with all the old stuff? Like, you'll have your vintage, records, which for a while they were trying to make a comeback with those your vinyl records, but they're big, they're bulky, cassette tapes, got replaced by CDs, and then by MP3s, and all those are obsolete. What are they doing with all that, all the old stuff? I mean, obviously, I do know that, I think Apple had a product, that was an iRecord player, where you play a record in it, like you normally would, and it would store that information, and you could put it to your iPod. But that was also when iPods were a thing, And now it's almost like you don't even really fucking need it, because you can just go on fucking the internet and just look for shit, iTunes, and put it on your phone. I mean, YouTube has YouTube Music. Okay, I went off topic there a little bit. My bad. But home equipment, they don't make it last anymore. Like the Maytag commercial. Remember those commercials? Where the stuff would just last and last and last and last. Nothing lasts anymore. It'll last for 3 years, and then you gotta fucking replace it. And then what do you do with all the old shit? What happens to old stuff that is either obsolete, or outdated? It's basically like the digital version of Fahrenheit 451. Good book, by the way. Another thing that's also outdated. I like books. I don't care what it says. I like flipping the page of a book. It's just me. It's just, I got a collection back there, but, we're living in the digital age of almost, Fahrenheit 451, but with the digital's worst. Everything is just fucking getting outdated. We're trying to reinvent the wheel for stuff everybody uses every day. Now, there are some things that, have made improvements, based on, the old way of doing things. Obviously, a gas or electric weed trimmer is better than the old-fashioned one where you have to swing around like a golf club. Okay, so I can understand that. A push mower that's run by gas, and I know they make some electric ones. A lot easier a lot more effective than the quiet little push mower that, you know, is just all manual. So it gets the job done, you know, quite a bit better. But you know, everything else, you know, it's just getting outdated. And then, you know, there's no place to put the old stuff. You know, it just ends up in landfills. You know, which again impacts the environment. You know, I've covered this, you know, in some of my other videos, and so have many others. You know, what are we going to do with all the batteries for the old electric cars or the plug-in hybrid stuff? You know, that is commonly used. You know, I don't have the answer for that. You know, I don't have an answer for that. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. You know, how much stuff just gets replaced and replaced and replaced. And, you know, there are some, you know, technological devices that never did catch on. And, you know, again, I'm going to go back to, you know, motor vehicles, like parallel parking, you know, the one that does it for you. You know, and obviously, you know, that was just a short little fad. Oh my God, it's doing it. You know, and I know, I think it was either Honda or Hyundai, or maybe even Ford, that had a commercial comparing their SUV to a Land Rover. You know, this has, you know, seating for 7 or 5, comfortable seating for 5 or whatever. 7 cup holders. We also have 7 cup holders. This has parallel parking feature. This, well, doesn't. You know, at the time, I think it was like $17K. Perfect for those who can park themselves. But that fell out of favor because, you know, now they have backup cameras on everything. Yeah, minivans and larger would be, you know, like the monitors in the back. You know, that didn't really hang around because, you know, everybody just uses their phones, you know. You know, Quadra-Seer didn't catch on, although I do believe it is starting to surface in some vehicles. I think Tesla has it in the Cybertruck. You know, and that's usually what it was reserved for. You know, so again, you know, that was outdated, but never really caught on. So it wasn't replacing or getting replaced by anything. You know, but you know, we just need to stop trying to reinvent the wheel. I mean, if something works and isn't broke, don't fix it. You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yeah, you know, if something's been tried and true and it's worked for many, many years, you know, if not decades, you know, then why reinvent the wheel? I mean, why not just improve on what is already there? You know, obviously, you know, going from carburetor to fuel injection and getting rid of leaded fuel, you know, wanted to make an improvement. You know, same thing with, you know, lead paint, you know. Okay, that certainly made some improvement. You know, you don't hear about, you know, lead poisoning as much. But, you know, again, you know, you just got to find that balancing act, you know. Make something better, but not try to fucking totally reinvent the wheel because, you know, we're just not, I just don't think that we're capable of sustaining ourselves by, you know, reinventing the wheel with everything. You know, that includes things like computers, you know, vehicles, you know, household appliances. You know, sometimes simplicity is better. I mean, case in point, the Toyota pickup. You know, we saw what they did in Top Gear, and I know Whistling Diesel did his own version of that. It was simple. It worked. It got you from point A to point B. And that's what made it so indestructible. I mean, yeah, it was susceptible to rust, but, you know, based on, you know, the box frame design, but, you know, other than that, you know, the truck was made to be indestructible. That's why they're using fucking war zones. That's why if you fucking Google war-torn areas, like, Africa, Middle East, you're going to see them using Toyotas. Fucking riddled with bullet holes. And the things are still fucking moving. Because, again, simplicity. Anyhow, that's just my 2 cents. I'll talk to you.